So in this video today we're going to look into some of the ways that we can mute our strings when playing. And these little tricks are something that I use myself in my own playing all the time. Muting happens with two hands, so we're going to look into both hands individually and see which hand is actually better in each situation and how they combined together can work together to make your playing better. So let's start with the right hand. My right hand is usually resting on the bridge whenever I play riffs, melodies or solos. When I'm playing chords, my hand lifts off the bridge and the motion is much bigger, so that's not really relevant. So I'm going to focus on single line sort of playing. And whenever my hand is on the bridge, that's when most of the muting obviously happens. So whenever I'm playing the top three strings, G, B, and E, the palm of my hand is covering the bottom three, which means that I'm either resting my hand on the bridge and slightly touching them with the fleshy part of my hand, or I'm actually resting my whole hand on top of the strings, whichever feels more comfortable in any particular situation. And you don't want to lock your hand in one position. You want to kind of go up and down as you play your different sets of the strings. So that's muting strings below the pick. And by below, I mean below in terms of pitch. So the lower register strings. What about the strings that are above the pick in terms of the pitch? Let's say you're playing and you're bending a third string. So the lower strings are fine now. But for the strings above, I simply rest my middle and third finger on strings 2 and 1. I don't know if you could hear it, but now as I bent it, the fourth string, the one that was next to the third string, kind of got on under my bending finger and created some more noise. So to prevent that from happening, what I do is I bend a string and I immediately rest my pick on the adjacent string, on that note over here. You can either rest your pick or your thumb. It depends whichever you prefer actually. But this also eliminates any kind of string noise that could come from the bend. So that combined with your palm muting and the middle and ring finger on the top strings will allow you to have those clean bends and melody lines. So now let's move on to our left hand. There are a couple of things that you can do to assist your right hand in unwooden string action. Chords. So whenever you play chords, your two best friends are your thumb and your index finger. Thumb is great when you play open chords or thumb over the neck bar chord shapes type of thing. Let's say we play an A minor chord. Let's get the volume up. You can hear that if I play it as it is, it will have that muddiness to it that comes from the open E string, open 6 string. What if I put my thumb just above it, so I slightly touch it, it kind of gets muted. If I play the A minor chord, it's much clearer now. Just so you know, if you're a beginner or just starting out or not used to it, having that thumb over the neck might feel a little uncomfortable. So just give it time and you'll get used to it. So while we have our thumb up there, let's play the famous F chord. But this time I'm not playing the F bar shape, but actually easier non-bar shape. So the thumb is doing two jobs now. It's actually fretting the 6th string and muting the 5th. Now my index finger is great as well because it's fretting the 2nd string, 1st fret, and muting the 1st string. So both of these fingers are doing two jobs at the same time. And the way it works, I'm fretting with the tip of my index finger and I'm slightly touching it with the meaty part of my finger, and I'm touching the 1st string. However, in this particular case, it doesn't work with other chords if we go up the neck, but with this F major chord, we can easily turn it into F major 7 by simply releasing that 1st string so we let it ring. Because an E note is the major 7th interval in a chord. easily switch back and forth between the two. So to advance things a little bit, let's try playing some of those broken down frusciante chords with the root and the third above the octave. So the only strings that I'm fretting here are the 5th string and the 2nd across all of those shapes. But all the rest of the strings are muted with just one finger, which is index. So I'm simply fretting the 5th string that I need to hear, and I'm resting my index finger across all of the strings that are basically above it in terms of pitch, but below in terms of the earth center. But what I also do, I use the tip of my index finger, to mute the 6th string. So that way I can actually give a lot of energy into my playing, where I strum across all of the strings. And only here too. So when soloing or playing riffs, both index and thumb are great to use for muting. In a riff or a pentatonic noodle situation like this lower and upper string breakdown helps. So my thumb is usually responsible for the strings 5 and 6, and index is covering kind of the rest of them. So in a funkier situation like you have to be really precise, especially precise with your muting, because the right hand is not really focusing on accuracy, it's more focusing on articulation and energy levels. So your left hand and all of the techniques that we just discussed with your thumb and index finger really need to shine in that situation. So all of this combined with the right hand techniques that we discussed earlier will bring about the best and cleanest playing possible. So in order to prevent unwanted strings from ringing, one can not only mute them, but also not play them. I know it almost sounds too obvious, but I think having the control where the pick falls on which strings in terms of the register is kind of overlooked. For instance, let's say I'm playing a chord in a high register, so the top 3 strings. Now my hand is moved away from the regular chord strumming position, and it's kind of angled in a way that it only hits the top 3 strings, avoiding the 6th and 5th and potentially 4th. This allows me for a more comfortable position for my left hand, so I don't have to hold my thumb all the way above the fretboard. And the 4th string is a bit odd one, because sometimes it happens that I hit it, right? So to prevent it from ringing, then I use my index finger, well, the tip of it, to mute it. But even if I unmute it, for the most part, you wouldn't hear that D string ringing out at all. So the same works with the power chords, where you kind of want to aim to hit the lower register strings. And this allows you some freedom with the muting, where you don't have to make sure that all the strings are muted all the time. But since we have that kind of habit of having our index finger across all the strings from just playing simple bar chords, it's a good skill to have, and it's a good habit to have. But in a weird situation where you can't do it, or you can't reach it, or you can't be bothered, it's good to have that pick playing on the lower register or wherever your chord is. So these are some of the ways that I mute strings when I'm playing. If you were to adopt some of these into your own playing, I'm sure you would notice that your playing has become much better and much cleaner. So go give it a try and let me know what you think. And if you have any questions or your own ways of muting strings, please leave them down below. And so thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.